And I just kept thinking about them. God, you're helping him. It's amazing, to see how far this horse has come.
It's not easy, it's hard. We would rather starve than let our horses starve. We want the horses. We want to help them. We want to be able to make a difference in their lives.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the presenter and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Horse Plus Humane Society, the Full Circle of Life Network, or any of their employees or management. The information contained in this presentation is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. Any reliance you place on such information is strictly at your own risk. We strongly encourage you to conduct your own independent research and seek professional advice as needed.
All right, I know we have gone through a ton of stuff, but we only have a short time with y'all, and we try to present everything we feel is most pertinent, and it's a lot. So I am very excited about taking you all to this Big Lick show. Now, if the Big Lick folks figured out what we're doing and they canceled their whole event because we're coming, well, I mean, that would be a first, but I'm really excited that you all have the opportunity. There are magazines on the tables that you can probably look at. Those are magazines that they put out. Glorifying it, yes.
They think.
Yes. But any horse person that looks at it, it's pretty horrifying to look at.
There are some pretty flat shod horses in there.
Yeah, there's some pretty flat shods, but there's way more. The performance horses is the most desirable. All right, so we're going to be jumping into this presentation. This is an important presentation because this is piloting the philosophy that you have learned. So taking it home, will it work for your organization, and what does that look like, and what are we looking for?
All right, so you now should have, assuming good memory and good notes, all the tools and information you need to pilot a full circle of life horse shelter. Is this philosophy right for you and your organization? But you won't know that until you give it a try in your community, really.
And if you forgot, we're here to help remind you. So yeah, it would be totally fine if you're like, oh man, I can't remember what do I do here? I mean, we're here to mentor and guide.
Being part of the network, best practices. If you're not following best practices, we will have to remove you from the network. Here's a few examples.
So growing this network, we want everyone to keep their own individuality of their organization. But there are some organizations that have joined or tried to join. It doesn't work. And I'm going to go over just a few examples. So best practices is basically if your largest donor was at your property, anything that you would normally do should be available or could be filmed for that biggest donor.
Yep.
If there are things through training tactics or conversations or anything that you wouldn't want your largest donor to hear or see, then don't do it. Everyone has cameras, and if you're, and the camera part shouldn't even be like, oh, I don't want to do this because I might get filmed. Best practice, we're running businesses that need to be the best business they can. And part of that is making sure that you are doing everything to a T that someone could come and film you all day long and show it to your donors, and they'd be like, that's great. And that's what, a huge part of this. We have a huge presence of followers and organizations. We will not be supporting an organization that doesn't have best practices. We want to support everyone. We might this doesn't work for you, and that's fine, but you have to have best practices to be in this network. And if something comes up and it's you know, wow, they did that to that horse and that's not okay. Now, I know there's haters out there, but I can look at a situation and pretty easily gather, is this legit or is it just haters being haters? Because I've seen what haters say and I know what we do. So this organization was in the network for a little bit. We did have to remove them. I'm sure you can figure out why.
And if you can't tell, it's somebody picking up a horse's back hoof while wearing skids or sandals.
And the horse has been at the trainer, sent to the trainer and doing great. We really can't support,
No.
that's not best practices. Like out there in your flip-flops, you know, like we don't want to be sharing this content. Like we really want to be like every week sharing something from one of the organization's pages within the network where we actually have somebody that's going to be coming and joining our team to share what you're doing with your organization and sharing it and advertising it onto our platforms. So we have the Full Circle Life Horse Shelter Network Facebook page. We want to be featuring what you guys are doing on there. We cannot feature that. We got a question.
Yeah, I was going to say that technically you could just cut off the picture and not have the sandals on display and it would have been fine. Quote, fine.
If you're going to be dumb, hide it well. Thank you.
Yes, best practices are something like, you know, if one of our major donors was following you all, and I know one of our major donors has reached out this week to one of the organizations within the network, and they donate massive amounts of money to help rescue horses, and one of the organizations in the network is like, hey, they reached out to us and everything. I want to have full confidence of our donors reaching out to support different organizations in the network and knowing that these organizations have best practices, and I feel comfortable supporting them, and so should our followers.
Need gone ASAP, it says.
So this situation, and this is the same poor organization, but I removed their name. Nobody needs to know. So this wasn't one of their horses that they were advertising, so they just copied Equine Link Now over and shared it onto their page. It was to a kill buyer feedlot, and in that post it said, this horse will be shipped to slaughter, needs to go right now. It looks like it's the organization. So we can't be like supporting and sending our donors to, you know, places that are really like advertising for kill buyers on their platform. Like, we want the money that's out there to be coming to your organization, not enriching kill buyers. I'll just let this play and then we'll talk. This leaves me with no words. This is another organization that was part of the network and is no longer.
Thank you, Tuck. Holy shit! Thank you, Tuck.
Can we turn the volume up on it at all?
Holy shit!
Yeah, the volume needs to be up.
No, I'm not going to worry. You won right, Mama. Holy shit! Damn, you gonna kill yourself?
Stay in our nose, though.
It's pretty bad when you can hear the horse breathing through the video.
Well, I will try to put my words together after this. He's choking it down right now. If your donor was standing there watching, would you do that?
They might actually.
So it
Correct response. You wouldn't do it, period.
Yes. It is very, very important that what you do at your organization, you would allow your biggest donor to stand there and view everything. And this organization was one that I had watched for years on Facebook. I thought, like, this organization is a great organization. I really respected them. I met some of their folks, and I was like, I was thrilled when they signed up to join this. And then this came out on the internet. And like I said, like, if the haters are out there showing different things and stuff, it's like, okay, you can look at it and kind of figure it out. I watched this and I'm like, I don't know what they're going to have to say about this, but I want to know what they have to say about this. Because maybe they hired that trainer and the founder was gone that day, and the trainer just wildly did that or something, and they're gonna like condemn it publicly, like, hey, this is not okay, we do not condone this, this trainer is no longer at our facility. And I want to be careful how I talk about this, but I don't want any of you to go down the path, because any person watching that is pretty horrified that that's not how you would want donor dollars to be going to treat animals. And this group is part of a network through one of the national organizations that they were trying to get a network going together of basically of organizations all coming together and working together. And when this came out, they pulled them real quick from the website, and then they talked to them, and this horse was a wild feral horse, and basically from the conversation that I got is, maybe they shouldn't have rescued that horse. Well, then what happens to that horse? So the full circle life philosophy is we're rescuing these horses, but does that horse look like it's enjoying its 5 freedoms? And I was told it's a very dangerous horse. It had kicked, it struck, and all these things. We have to look at the 5 freedoms and the AEP guidelines. Is that horse a danger to itself or others? Mm-hmm. And we don't need to be trying to literally break horses to try to make them adoptable. There are horses that come into our organizations that are literally traumatized to a point that they can't like go on to find a home. Mental health problems, it's a thing in horses too. Like, we have to evaluate these situations, but I can't put our name behind this organization after, like, I worked really hard to get a meeting with them. We kept reaching out and different staff members that were able to talk to them. It wasn't a good situation, but I wanted to make sure I got their side of the story. And I told them, look, if you can make a statement and you like totally renounce this, and like, there's still no statement. So please don't do stuff like this. It's not okay for the horses. If you rescue a really rough horse and you're like, I don't know what to do, reach out to us. You have a wealth of information of organizations within the network that we can all support each other in hard situations. But apparently they had to get her out of the round pen and
wanted to put her in the stall.
And I'm just like, yeah.
It's not worth it for that horse.
And we had a training program, and there was a trainer that laid a horse down, and there was a whole bunch of people on the internet that got all fired up about it. And I had veterinarians look at the video and everything, and they're like, it was fine, it was humane. The horse world on the internet side, you can't explain laying a horse down, because it can be done properly and can be done that was not proper. So at our facility, we don't lay horses down. And one person who Carrie referred to early in one of her presentations, I talked to him about this trainer that had laid the horse down. And he said, if a horse is to the extent that you have to go to extreme measures to try to make it adoptable, why are you adopting it out? And that's something to think about, because if we go with the 5 freedoms and we go with what the AEP guidelines are, there are horses out there that it puts them through way more mental torture to try to get them to be adoptable. And we don't want to say, well, let's not rescue that horse at all and let it go to slaughter, because we know what happens. You watch that video. I mean, that's horrific. No horse should do that. We need to be there for those horses, but in a humane way. So this situation was another organization that was in the network briefly. And, you know, you all go out and do your own organizations. Like, we're not trying, like, I'm not naming names. I'm just showing you the scenarios of what can get you removed. This organization rescued a horse. It had a pretty severe medical problem. And this horse could not function very well at all. And one of the other members in the network, they actually visited this organization, and they're like, this poor horse they have there. And multiple veterinarians told them they needed to euthanize the horse for quality of life issues. They kept going to other veterinarians, trying to veterinarian shop to find a vet that will say, yes, we can keep it alive and this is what we need to do. And so it's like, well, 3 vets say that we need to euthanize it, but this vet said we could probably keep it alive if we did this and this. And so I'm gonna get more veterinarians and try to find, I'm like, it takes a lot for a veterinarian, and I've tried to bring that out through this. It takes a lot for a veterinarian to say, this horse needs humane euthanasia. They're advocating for that animal. And if a vet is saying it's time to let this horse go, follow your veterinarian's advice.
Especially a second opinion, right? I mean,
yeah. And like, one thing to think about, if your veterinarian is saying this horse needs humane euthanasia, and you're going even to go get more second opinions and all these things, how much resources are you putting into one horse when you could be saving a lot more horses with the same amount of limited resources that we have? So we're very much don't go against your veterinarian's advice. And if we find out that you're going against your veterinarian's advice, we can't support that, because you've got to be following your veterinarian's advice. And remember what our veterinarians said when they were doing our classes. They will give advice on things you can do, because that's their job as a veterinarian, to elaborate on everything you possibly can do. Well, you can take it here and get this procedure done. It could be $40,000. They're going to tell you every option. It's your job as organizations to say, we have limited resources. This is the amount of money that we can put in to this horse. Does that work? And that's in line with the AEP guidelines of, you know, financially, if something's not feasible. There's some organizations that have been like, well, the vet said to do this, so we're $20,000 in on medical bills and our organization's folding. It's that open communication with your veterinarian. But, you know, the veterinarian world is a small world, and if we have a full circle life horse shelter that's disregarding veterinarian's advice, it's going to get back to us. And it's very important to follow your veterinarian's advice, but also, you know, with that capacity of like being open and honest with your veterinarian as far as financial resources, restraints that you have. Just because they say you can do this and this and this, and you're like, financially we can't, we don't say, oh, what they wouldn't have been against the veterinarian's advice on that. You're operating within your organization's means. And
you can always ask your veterinarian questions. It's not saying don't ask questions. It's if a vet is giving a quality of life assessment where a horse needs humane euthanasia, don't keep that horse alive for your emotional well-being.
And I think one thing to think about with humane euthanasia decisions is if you're thinking the horse might need it, its time has probably already come and gone. You don't think of your healthy, happy animal of like, oh, this animal is like perfectly happy and healthy. It probably doesn't need euthanasia. Like, it's not even our thoughts. Like, the animal's happy and fine. When you start thinking it, that animal is telling you through the signs that it's showing you that it's suffering. And that's when you got to work with your veterinarian, and your veterinarian will help guide you through that process of, when it's the right time. And there's some animals that, it can be, totally fine to give them some time. If the veterinarian's like, it's okay, we can keep them comfortable, but this can't be a prolonged situation. There are horses that we rescue that are in such horrible condition, it's like, they have to be euthanized right now. We cannot manage this pain. And then there's some that it's like, this horse will never be adoptable, but we can give him a week on the green pasture and let him enjoy his life. So it's all things to communicate with your veterinarian. But following your veterinarian's advice is a huge, huge key for us. Oh, let's see.
Important things to remember. 1, being an open admission shelter doesn't mean you take in every horse for free. Charging a surrender fee is appropriate and is important for financial stability. Number 2, it's okay to take a limited number of horses into your facility without a fee. Hardship surrenders are okay if they're a limited number each month. Number 3, don't operate your facility at overcapacity. Animals won't be getting the proper care they need, and you'll be pushing yourself into burnout. 4, tell the horses stories. Ask your donors to help them. And 5, take time for yourself so you can help the horses.
Now, I will tell you that our organization, dog-wise, is pretty over capacity right now because we have a seizure case that we're working on that's just rough. But if you walk through a really well-ran dog and cat shelter, a very nice facility, you'll notice that maybe like 25% of their kennels are in use and everything else is empty. And years ago when walking through, I was like, wow, they could have so many more animals. We were around the shelter doing our normal stuff one day. I got a call about an emergency case where it was a repeat offender, so all the animals were being surrendered over. And we went there to help. There was another organization taking care of the dogs, so we went there to help take care of the livestock. And we, at the end of the day, brought back 96 animals, I think it was.
Including parrots and turtles.
Parrots and turtles and geckos and geese, and it was wild. But our big intake barn was not full of animals sitting there because we have a barn, let's fill it up. We were able to put, here, 2 stalls are dedicated to sheep, and this one's dedicated to goats, and here's this one for the hairy pig. We had the facility to support it. So if you're operating at overcapacity constantly, now sometimes we were at capacity with that rescue, but within 48 hours we had networked all of them out, but 20 of them, to other organizations.
Because we're not a gecko rescue.
We're not a gecko rescue.
But there are gecko rescues.
We will rescue geckos. But you need to be able to have your facility where you can bring large amounts of animals in and get them moved quickly. So that's important to think about capacity. If you're asked to help and your shelter's full, you can't be there to help in those situations when the county is like, we really need your help. And you're like, sorry, we're full. Volunteers are great.
Or they're terrible.
Volunteers can also be the biggest headache. One way that is a great way of bringing volunteers in to your organization, that's how Dawn ended up with us, is have a volunteer day for bringing new volunteers into your organization. If you have a designated volunteer day, when people are reaching out and being like, hey, I'd love to come volunteer at your organization, and maybe they're like, and you're like, sure, come on in. And then the next thing they know, they're in every part of your business. And the next thing you know, they're turning everyone against each other because they were a hater that snuck in. And you're like, what on earth just happened? If you have a designated volunteer day, anytime somebody's like, hey, I would like to volunteer, be like, that's great. The first Wednesday of the month, we're going to have our volunteer day. We have a project. It's from 9 to noon. Come on out. We'd love to meet you. We've just told, you can tell that to anybody. Like, one of our haters wants to come volunteer, that's great. Come on this day. If we see continuous stability in coming and that they're interactive and they want to do things at our organization, we might say, hey, we would love to have you out twice a month. We'd love to have you out and grow that friendship and that trust between you and the volunteer slowly, because so many organizations just like, sure, come on in and
you like writing emails? Okay, here's our computer, write emails.
Here's all the contacts. of your organization and donors. Like, these are all really important things to think about. Volunteer days are great because you can publicize it, you can put it as an outstanding event on Facebook just going forward, and you can have people come in and meet people in the community, and then as you feel comfortable, I mean, somebody might come and your vet is like, wow, I've known this person for 20 years, they're amazing, and you're like, wow, they want to come out here every other day. You know the vet's a trustworthy person, you trust their opinion, you can get people to come out. But if you're also protecting your organization in a realm of keeping it to a controlled environment, and then as you feel comfortable, you can have them come out more. Volunteer whenever they want, but it's on your terms, not, well, I'm a volunteer now, and you don't want me here, and yeah.
Because volunteer burnout is real, and having to fire a volunteer is hard.
It's bad. And you know they're going to go on the internet and complain. So that's some of our volunteers on Volunteer Day.
Surrender fees. Charge a surrender fee that will cover the cost of a horse coming into your organization. This will allow you to bring horses into your organization without causing a financial hardship. If a horse needs help and the owner pays a surrender fee to help cover this cost, you can help the horse. You can say yes instead of no. The surrender fee should cover a horse coming in for either adoption or euthanasia and disposal. Make a plan of how many hardship cases you can bring into your organization each month without a surrender fee, but plan on fundraising for those horses.
And for some of you all, it might be that you can bring one horse in once a quarter. And you just explain that. You know, with the surrender fee, we can bring your horse in, but maybe we have to pay board. I know some of you all actually are boarding horses and you don't have a facility. Explain these things, and if they want to pay, you would be totally shocked and surprised how many people have no problem making a significant donation to your organization if you can say yes instead of no.
Well, if they're already paying board, say they're paying $350 a month in board, and your surrender fee is $500, that's less than 2 months of board.
We do have a question, so mic and camera.
It's kind of a two-parter, so I hope that's okay. When we did our calculations of what it costs to take care of a horse for the first 30 days, we were at like $1,100. Is that an appropriate surrender fee? Because to me, that feels huge.
It feels huge, but it's not your responsibility to take on everyone else's problems. You have to run your organization as a business, and you can't be going in a deficit and saying yes to everyone. So you might be able to say, you know, once a month we can take one horse in for free, but everyone else is going to have to pay that surrender fee. And this is what it cost our organization. As rescuers, we cannot fix all the problems out there, but we can be there and say, yes, we can help you, but this is what the cost is. And you can also say, if you can send us pictures of this horse and explain the situation to our followers, they might be able to sponsor that horse to come in. And now you have a fundraising opportunity. You have photos of this horse so your followers can connect to it. You can send out an email. There's this person in this really desperate situation that wants to surrender this horse. They don't have the financial ability to pay the cost of bringing this horse into our organization. It's going to cost X, Y, Z, and explain it to your donors. And please help us be able to say yes to this person and bring this horse in. But like they said, as far as, you know, for the tax purposes, you know, we just, like our button that I send out in the email, it says help rescue, shelter, and protect. So that way, if
don't be like, help
this horse named Sandy come to the organization. So make sure, because you might send out an email and like say you build up your email base really good and you get 5 people on there and they're all going to donate $1,000 to $5,000 a piece.
And then that horse comes in.
And you're like, but you want to be able to tell the story, and like she said, and help help this horse and other horses like it, or other animals like it. But use those opportunities to be able to fundraise for your organization and tell the story to your donor. It's all about, like we've said, tell the story, tell the story. That's a need. You can fix it, but you need donations to make that happen. And if you don't have donations, like we're all gonna, like, I know a lot of you are funding it yourselves, like it's gotta be a sustainable business that can actually take care of itself. If we don't mind, let's go around the room and actually get those surrender fee prices that the homework we sent you.
So we had 1,100 here.
So we have 1,100.
I'm fine if people just shout it out, we can repeat it.
Yeah.
$1,000.
$1,000. $750,
1,000.
$1,000. So
What did the dog rescue figure out?
probably $1,500. $1,200, and that's like New Hampshire was $1,200. I mean, it's expensive up there.
What about you guys?
$850.
Back here?
$250. Okay.
I'm surrendering my horse to you.
Surprisingly, $650.
$650. Okay. And it's totally fine. It's so much better to give a horse owner an option than saying, sorry, no, we can't help you.
No is the worst thing you can tell somebody that needs help.
Like, give them options and be like, you know, hey, this is what it cost here, but if you can drive over to her, she has surrender fees for $250. I'm like, well, I was going to take a road trip and visit my aunt there. Well, that's wonderful. I'll take my horse there. Like, use the network.
Another thing too, if they are getting out of horses, you can ask them if they can donate their panels, their horse equipment, and sometimes that can help offset that cost.
Yeah, there was a surrender that happened relatively recently, and I don't know the situation involving the case. I mean, there could have been an illness or, you know, something happened, and this lady came with her beautiful horses, very well cared for horses, and this huge, beautiful, enclosed, fancy 5-horse slant trailer with a tack room and all the tack and everything. She unhooked her trailer and donated everything. Everything. Saddles, saddle pads, water buckets, everything. And we could have been like, oh, sorry, no, we can't take your horse. And she would have been like, well, what do I do? I guess I'm going to have to take him to auction. But she wanted to donate everything. Like, I knew she was donating horses that day. And there was something about maybe a trailer or something, but like, we unloaded the horses and she unhooked her trailer and signed everything over and drove away. Like, you don't know where people are coming from, and our minds jump to, oh, they're destitute, they have no option. They want to make sure their horse goes to a safe place, and you have no idea what financially they have behind them. They might have a huge arena that they want to donate, a nice paneled arena. We've got a question.
This is actually a comment, but right in the vein of what you're talking about. I've been places before where I've gone to pick up a horse that was being surrendered or two, and the person's obviously getting up there in years, and they will say, yeah, I love my horses, but I just can't do it anymore. And there's a beautiful trailer sitting over there, and I'm like, do you have plans with your trailer? We can list it on our site if you'd like us to help you sell it. And they say, oh, well, yeah, why don't you just send somebody to come pick that up? We'll donate it. And you don't want to be like, hey, give that to me, but it doesn't hurt to sort of, offer that. And a lot of times people, it hasn't even occurred to them that if they're getting rid of their horses, they don't have a need for any of these other things too, and they'll be happy to contribute that stuff to your organization.
And sometimes they're like, no, of course not. Okay.
Usually it doesn't hurt to ask, but instead of being like, getting that phone call and being like, oh, I have this horse, can you please take it? It's a 25-year-old horse, it has arthritis, and you're like, oh, this thing's not adoptable. Sorry, no, we can't, we're full. To be able to like, please tell me more about your situation. We'll do everything we can to help you, and let them talk. It's very important to listen. And I tell you, horse people, they love to talk. I'm so glad I'm not always answering all the phones, because I spent hours listening to people, but it's important to listen to what they have, and through that conversation, like you might find out they're getting out of horses, and it's really easy to be like, oh, is there anything like you have that you would like to donate to our organization to help further our mission?
5 freedoms. All right, 5 freedoms. Every horse should have the 5 freedoms. Freedom from hunger and thirst. Freedom from discomfort. Do you want me to read the italic? Okay. Freedom from hunger and thirst by ready access to fresh water and a diet to maintain health and vigor. Freedom from discomfort by providing an appropriate environment, including shelter and a comfortable resting area. Freedom from pain, injury, or disease by prevention or rapid diagnosis and treatment. Freedom to express normal behavior by providing sufficient space, proper facilities, and company of the animal's own kind. Freedom from fear and distress by ensuring conditions and treatments which avoid mental suffering.
these can be really applied to figure out what this animal's quality of life is. There was one horse our trainer for, I think it was over a year, kept working with, and every time he'd work with her, by the end of her training session, she was like starting to get it, but she reverted every single training session. And she was so bad that, like, if you walked around the corner of the barn, like she'd panic. Like, she was suffering from PTSD, and it wasn't
getting better.
At all. Like, and we did end up having to euthanize her after she hurt herself. Somebody walked around the barn and she panicked and ended up crashing in and slit herself open. We can't treat her. She's very, very afraid of everything. We can't sedate her and easily get her treated. Like, these are things to think about, and it comes back to those 5 freedoms. And it's very important to think about with horses.
Oh, operating with incapacity, or how not to get full. How to not get full. Strategies for sheltering policies to avoid being overran with horses. 1, charge a surrender fee that works for your area. 2, work with your veterinarians for protocols on end-of-life services, following the 5 freedoms and AAEP guidelines, and stick to those protocols. Responsibly rescue outside of owner surrender and law enforcement seizures as you can. In other words, don't rescue 50 horses at auction if you only have room for 10. 4, ask people to wait to surrender their horse if it is appropriate. And 5, the equine adoptability point system can help regulate the number of adoptable horses you have at your facility.
So maybe you're getting up to capacity and you're like, boy, if there's horses that we have that aren't adoptable, but I really don't know what that looks like. We will be sharing our point system with you. It is not, if a horse meets this number, it's euthanized. It's for you to be able to track behaviors and medical conditions. And if it comes to a point where you're like, maybe this horse needs the last act of kindness. Look at all of these problems this horse has. Is it realistic to think somebody is going to adopt this horse? And then meet with your veterinarian, show them the point system, explain what's going on, and get their advice. They're the experts. Within your organization's financial means and everything, what does this look like?
Outcomes. Adoption. Remember not to be biased against adopters. If they have a good relationship with their veterinarian and farrier, have a safe facility to own a horse, do what you can to get that horse into that home. Don't make adoptions too complicated. There are plenty of horses out there somebody wants to go buy a horse. The adoption process can be so complicated it turns off excellent homes because of all the stipulations. I think you should talk about that.
Yeah, so when we rescue these horses from really bad situations. We're like, they're safe now. We're going to be really, really careful. And it's very easy for us to be very judgy people because we see a lot of horrible things. And I know at one point, this poor guy was wanting to adopt a horse, and we have them send in their driver's license photo with the application. Like, we ask for it after they submit an application, just to make sure that they are who they say they are before we continue. And the girl that was processing the application, she's like, ooh, I don't like him. I think he's a bad adopter. I think we should deny him. I'm like, it's a driver's license photo. The vet checked out amazing. The farrier, like, everything was great on paper, but she was so biased. She was like, he's going to be a terrible adopter and all this stuff off of a photo. And then he came, and he was the nicest man, and his family was so sweet, and they adopted a horse, and the guy's adoption photo got it was like thousands of likes. We can't judge off of information that we don't know. So there's so many horses that need homes, and we can have lots of questions that we want answered before we adopt a horse. If you go onto the website and you list all of your stipulations, I'm going to go look. Even veterinarians get denied from adopting. And of course, there's one that maybe should have. But anyways, there are really qualified people out there that will go to your website and read your stipulations and be like, I'm not going to go through all that. I'm going to go over here and buy a horse off the internet that I see over here, and it'll be easy. You want your adoption process to be as easy as possible. We try to keep our adoption application as easy as possible. When the adopter is there, we're asking questions. People can say anything on paper. When you're actually meeting someone in person, that's where you're actually going to learn stuff about people. And so we approve our applicants for an appointment, and they're able to come view horses. You're approved for an appointment, and then we actually finish the rest of the adoption application in person, and they don't even know it. Because we can know way more about that person in person than judging off of what they say on paper.
You mean, for instance, like saying they're an experienced horse person, put the rope halter on backwards or something?
Yeah, stuff like that. Like, make it as simple as possible to get an appointment to your facility, and then approve the adoption once you actually know them, if possible.
Alrighty, another possible outcome is transfer, which is networking with other organizations, especially other full circle of life horse shelters, can help move horses to areas where they are more adoptable. Euthanasia is not a failure to the organization. It's an organization being responsible for horses who are not enjoying the 5 freedoms of life. Operating responsibly and caring for each horse with concern for their future now and in the years to come is being a responsible organization.
For years to come, so there has been times, and we have a question up here, there's been times where you might have a horse come in that is okay right now. Like, say it's a really complicated case of a young horse that has a very mangled leg, and the veterinarian's looking at the x-rays and is like, in a year or two, as this horse grows, this leg is going to fall apart. Is it really fair to try to find that horse a home for 2 years, and some kids are going to get attached to it, and then they're going to have to make the decision instead of you? We have a question here.
It's on the adoption process.
1 second, please.
1 second.
I was just wondering, as part of your process, do you do site visits and follow-up site visits on horses that you adopt out?
So retaining ownership of any kind can be very, very dangerous for your organization. If someone gets hurt for that horse, so the example I'll give you, like this was like, you know, you meet these horses and like some of them just stay in your heart. And there's this one horse that he was just amazing. And I just absolutely loved him, and he was sweet. I was just like, oh, we found him a really wonderful home. And she adopted a couple horses from us, and just absolutely wonderful, wonderful woman. And the horses, you know, get updates on them, everything's great. And she did have an electric fence, but like that's very common for horse owners to have electric fence. Some dogs came in the middle of the night and started chasing her horses. So she had 2 horses. There was 3 other horses in this pen. So there's a group of 5 horses. You have dogs come in and start chasing them. They broke through the electric fence. They ended up on a highway, and one car hit all 5 horses. The person in the car died, and the horses died. Some of them had to be put down, including that one that was just like, it's a horrible situation. Came out that we received a call from a lawyer who wanted to know about our adoption contract, if we were fostering any of those horses, and we answered his questions, and he's like, okay, that's good. I want to let you know, just some free advice from a lawyer, that if you had fostered those horses or you retained ownership, I would be going after you.
For wrongful death.
This is very, very serious. This can take down your entire organization.
And you personally.
And you personally.
So, a follow-up to that. In our adoption contract, it stipulates that if the horse is put in an unsafe situation, that we have we have first right to refusal if they want to return the horse or send it somewhere else. But we also have the right to come in and take a look at the horse's living situation and pull the horse. So does that...
You're still retaining ownership if you can remove the horse.
Okay.
It's a very serious thing to think about.
And your laws may vary in your state.
Your laws may vary in your
California.
state, but talking to different people across the United States, it's something that can take down your entire organization. And the lawyer's like, I'm like, this is really good information, and you know, tell me more. And he's like, because the fence was an electric fence, and they had some expert deem that it was not suitable, that they were going after everyone, the family, with the lawyers for wrongful death. So if you're retaining ownership, it is a very, very scary thing. And we have to think, we are trying to get these horses out of really bad situations, and we are doing our very, very best to find them the best home possible. That is our actual time that we own those horses, that we can do that. When the horses go into someone else's care, we've done our job. I've adopted kids, we've adopted kids from the state, and we went through the process. They approved us. We got the kids, we fostered the kids, all this stuff. But when we actually adopted them, they're like, signed off. I'm like, so is there any follow-up? What you gonna do? Like, no, it's your job now to be that responsible person. And if you're not, somebody's gonna report you and we're gonna have to deal with you then. But it's your job at that time of adoption as the adopter to be that responsible person. It's our job as an agency to do everything we can to ensure that that is a good home for that horse. And I can tell you, you can approve people, and there will always be people that, there's horses that fall through the cracks. You can do everything possible, they can fall through the cracks, and you're turning more adopters away that could be really good adopters by making adoptions very complicated. And while you own those horses, that's your time to find the best homes you can for them. I have a question.
Yeah, I just want to have a clarification on whether or not in your adoption contract, they can surrender them back to you.
For life.
For life, right. But that does not indicate that you are retaining some kind of an ownership.
So to the best of my knowledge, I'm not a lawyer. I don't even play one on TV. Even a first right of refusal is basically unenforceable.
Right, okay, but...
So, yes, they are always, while we're an open admission shelter, they can bring a horse to us anytime they want.
Right,
so yes, that is in our adoption contract. But, and we still have a first right of refusal.
It's a sum of $1. So we're saying, you adopt the horse, please bring it back.
Right.
When they own that animal, because horses are property considered, like a couch. If you sell a couch to someone, you're like, we have a first right of refusal, it's basically up to them to honor it.
Correct. My question was more about the legal part of if you say, we want you to surrender it back to us if there becomes a problem, does having that language in your contract
it's helpful.
Indicate, though, that you still have any kind of ownership?
Not to any attorney that I've talked to.
Yeah. Okay. So in one situation, we adopted out this horse. Now, this was years ago in our organization. She did have some medical issues, and as far as lameness, if she came into our organization now, we wouldn't have placed her for adoption. But we placed her for adoption with this lady. She ended up going through a divorce, and she took the horse to auction. And I was at the auction, and I'm like, wait a minute, I remember her. So I purchased her, and I reached out to her, and I'm like, what happened? And she's like, well, I couldn't keep her anymore. I'm like, you're supposed to bring her back to me. That's what the contract says. And she's like, well, I needed the money and all this stuff. And so her lawyer, because, I mean, you have a contract. Like, this is what was supposed to happen. You signed this. And her lawyer was like, give her the money it costs to rescue that horse back. It's not worth it. So if you have that language in there, like she owned that horse. Right. It was an agreement between her and the organization. And, it's really building that relationship and that with that adopter that's going to keep things safer than not. If we can, maybe just write your questions down. We do have a really good question and answer time at our organization. And we are on time restraints today. So we have grants available for your organizations. We have urgent need grants. We have situations like if you rescue a bunch of horses and you're like, hey, we just took in these horses, we could really use some financial assistance. We can say, okay, so maybe $250 per horse is a matching grant to tell your followers. So If you're like, okay, well, we've got 5 horses, so that's $1,000.
Whatever it is.
4 horses. We have $1,000.
There we go.
Right. I don't know. My math is 3rd grade education here. So you have a matching grant donation. You can reach out to your followers and say, we have a match up to this amount to help bring these horses in. Donors love matches. Their dollar goes from
$1
to 10 to 20. So you can reach out to us and tell us like, hey, we've got this situation. Is it available? Any grants available to help with this situation? Gelding grants, we try to keep these grants up here unlimited as much as possible. We strive very, very hard to never say no to these grants. And every organization within the network or people you're working with are eligible for this. So if you get a phone call of someone that has an older horse and you talk with them and you're like, their horse might need humane euthanasia, and they're like, well, I think we could do that here. It'd probably be best for the horse. We can help. It's some money that can incentivize them to make the right decision. And if the horse comes into your organization, it will lighten the load for you. And like if you want to do a euthanasia clinic for your community going into fall so older horses aren't suffering, like talk to us. We might be able to help fund it. Gelding clinics, talk to us. Gelding clinics are a great way to work with local universities that are training veterinarians to bring students in and have a bunch of stallions to geld. There's lots of options there, and we're more than happy to send money to help those animals.
Fundraising. Each horse that comes into your organization is an opportunity for more fundraising. If a Facebook post is doing well, boost it to help it reach more people who can help support your organization. Remember, always tell your story, and your donors will support you.
All right, now we can take like one question, and then we have a question for you.
In my contract, I have a clause that says if I see this animal in the slaughter pipeline anywhere, and it could be any auction anywhere, that they will be fined up to $50,000. Is that too complex to have in there? I don't know if it's enforceable. It probably isn't, but that
would scare me as an adopter.
I wouldn't adopt from you, because what if I got hospitalized and
your horse was stolen.
Or the horse was stolen. And you really want in your contract, you want it to be simple. You want a lawyer to look at it and find out what's actually enforceable. We can pull things out of the sky and like, oh, this is a great idea. I'm going to put it in here. Sure. Realistically, if your horse was stolen, it's not that adopter's fault.
Sure. Okay.
So those are very good things. Like, look at your adoption applications and be realistically what is realistic here, and have a lawyer review it, and only put in what you're actually willing to do.
In other words, and this is something to think about, if you have it in your contract, but you're not willing to sue to enforce it, why have it in the contract?
Oh, but I would.
Because it costs how many, I don't know about everywhere else, but I know in Tennessee, a corporation cannot represent themselves in court. And so you have to hire an attorney. How much does an attorney retainer cost? $5,000 right off the bat. Are you willing to spend $5,000 because somebody violated a finer nuance of your adoption contract?
There will always be horses, sadly, that fall through the cracks because we live in a very sad world. Within this network, we can be like, hey, I adopted this horse to this person. This horse is in a bad situation. We all know we're not going to adopt this person, and we're across the United States. Sure. Another thing to think about, just like when we adopted kids from the state and they signed them over and they're like, it's your responsibility to be a responsible parent. It's their responsibility to be a responsible horse owner. It is law enforcement's job, and we all know some places aren't great when it comes to horse cases with law enforcement, but it is law enforcement's job to make sure those animals are being taken care of. And it's your job to report and complain and keep reporting to protect those horses if you know that there's a problem. We can spend thousands and thousands of dollars going after one person, and we could have used that money to rescue a whole lot of horses when we put them on a do not adopt list, internally within the network, we know this is not a good person to adopt to, and we can rescue more horses.
Thank you.
All right, we have one more question that we'll take, and then we have a question.
Okay, this is a little bit off the contract, but what do you do when you have horses that are not that adoptable, but they're very healthy and happy? Do you keep them for life? Do you, I mean, like pasture pets, right? But how long what do you do?
You have to determine that with your organization. So our board of directors has said, this is our capacity, and this is what you need to operate with and stay within those numbers. So when we're getting up to, say, like where we would be like, we're kind of getting up there. Now, the nice thing is adoptable horses find homes. In the dog and cat world, in big shelters, they're only counting adoptable euthanasias. In the horse world, we kind of are like, we're counting everybody. We euthanize this horse. So we put ourselves in the kill shelter category bracket when ultimately we're not. Because if we're going under standards with dogs and cats, like they do behavioral assessments, health assessments, all of these things, and shelters are very quickly like, no, we're not going to take this dog. It's going to eat our staff. And it's just the way it is. The point system can help look at these horses and say, we're very comfortable having this group of horses. And then if you're getting like, I don't know about these ones, have the point system. There's a reason they're not getting adopted. Start chalking that down. Talk with your veterinarian about it. And when I worked at a vet office at one point, there were beautiful, healthy-looking horses in fall that would come in. They were older horses, or they had something wrong with them. They would come to the veterinarian clinic for humane euthanasia because those owners were being responsible. And we thanked those owners for being responsible for their horses. Like, they brought them to the vet clinic. These horses were not suffering yet. Like, they were saying goodbye to them on a good day. Yeah. And as rescuers, a lot of times we get those horses that would have been the same horse that came in from the vet clinic, but now we have a rescue that has it. Let's keep this horse alive as long as we possibly can. We have to be able to say it's okay to say goodbye on a good day. And that's something that you have to work on your own organization with, your capacity and your veterinarian, and to figure out what that looks like. But saying goodbye on a good day is way better than saying goodbye in the middle of a snowstorm, in the middle of the night, when you're going to pay thousands of dollars to get your veterinarian out there and that horse is suffering. Horses, like so eloquently said, they fear suffering over death.
They fear suffering, they don't fear death.
They fear suffering. Yeah, thank you. Dyslexic here. But it was very eloquent.
I think this paragraph is great. This isn't a journey you have to take alone. In other words, the rescue journey. There are other organizations across the United States willing and ready to help you where they can in this journey.
And if you've been through all of this and you're like, this really isn't for our organization, that's 100% fine. Sure. But we do have a question for you.
Do you, each and every one of you, at your organization, want to pilot a full circle of life horse shelter?
Yes! All right, that's wonderful. And we will be here to walk with you every step of the way on this journey that you've taken. And for those of you who are like, this isn't for us, that's totally fine.
Or if you want to think about it, or talk to your board.
You can't give an answer right now, and maybe you'll get back to us. But we are here to take this journey with you all. And I think you're stepping out in faith to try something that Carrie was in 4 years ago, and her organization was about to shut down, and now she's having to get audits because financially she's at that point where she's like $500,000. I have to get independent audits now. Like, we want everyone's organizations to get to that point, and working together, we can do it. So.
And if you hadn't noticed, Carrie likes talking to you too.
Yes, she does. So we are going to break for lunch now. For those of you who did raise your hands, come join us up here. And for those of you who are kind of still thinking on the fence, you can get lunch, and we'll discuss more when we come back here.
Full Circle of Life Horse Shelter Network.
you.